very fundamental and basic questions. From the very fact that, do you think that industry is growing or stagnating as an MR industry? What do you think are some of the reasons why we are either growing or stagnating? What role do you think technology can play in the industry? Are we really adapting technology well? If you think technology can play a great role, what are the areas we think it can play some of those roles? So I think we asked some of those questions. We got, I'll not say a lot of response. As a researcher, we want to get response, but we are pretty not so good in giving those kind of a response. So the sample size is smaller, so to say, it's not significant. But what we eventually got out of that piece of information we asked for is this. As an industry, we are restricted in terms of our growth. I think most of us sitting in this room know the size of the industry. The primary research industry is approximately $45 billion. And in the last 5 years, I think it has kind of stagnated. And a few of the reasons which you guys have highlighted and a lot of industry people are talking about is the restricted use of technology or the new age phenomena in the world of market research. I heard some paper yesterday where we talked about the scale, the 7-point scale. Someone was saying that, and when was the first time it was ever used? It was in 1932. So from 1932 to 2018, I think we still haven't evolved to the extent we probably would have, could have. And I think technology has been not really adapted well. And these are some of the things, again, I think no surprises. A lot of you talked about it, that speed to insight, data amalgamation, and maybe giving room to the humans to really focus on the deeper insight part of it. So I think someone yesterday also talked about admin work. We spend 30% of our time in the admin kind of a work. So can we really use technology effectively to take care of some of those aspects or not? And that's also true in our own world, which is the market research world. Forget the admin part, there are so many other aspects we keep on doing the same way, which we have been doing all these many years. So yeah, those were some of the things which I think you guys talked about. And I think what does that imply? Probably if we have to grow, we have to transform. And I think I'm assuming no one in this room doesn't agree with that fact. We really have to transform, and in some ways we are transforming. I'll be dishonest in saying that we are not, we are doing, but probably the pace could have been better. And I think if it was not, then probably this is the time we have to. And also listening to the presentation just a while back, we just have 2 years to first pace this and outpace ourselves in some ways. So yeah, and I think technology is an enabler, and we have to really adapt that very well. I have some snippets, and probably a lot of you would have seen that. If you notice, in a lot of parallel kind of an industry, which is IoTs or the big data of the world, there are billions of dollars which are being spent. By one of the reports, it said in last 5 years, the amount of data which has been spent on the analytics world, which is including big data and IoT, only 4% of that has been usable, which was able to be used in terms of either strategy or from a marketing or any perspective point of view. Which only means to say that still it's early days for that particular industry, but people have a lot of faith. They're saying we are still willing to invest in that kind of industry. And why can't we be in that space where probably I believe we have given far better results to the marketing organization or to the strategy organization than the 4% kind of an impact. But still people are losing some bit of faith in the so-called the world of market research. So I think there's enough data to prove that people have money to spend, corporations have money to spend. It is just that we have to be there and we have to be in that position to provide them that kind of a input or that kind of a handle which they are willing to spend for. So I think that is very important. And I have this this is my favorite example, which is the Uber example. How technology has really changed the transportation industry. $26 billion was their revenue just itself in 2016. We all have been using some kind of mode of transportation all our life. Just use of technology, someone's brainchild, they came up with this app-based taxi booking, and it's a different phenomena. So that's one of those kind of examples which is kind of changing the landscape, how the corporations are kind of working out or how the corporations are moving ahead. And I think that's very important, and we somewhere as an industry also have to learn from that, adapt that, and move fast in that particular direction. And I think I personally are also equally a culprit when I say that, hey, we have been using technology. Who says that as researchers we don't use technology? But we always misuse the term of automation and technology in the same breath. I don't think, though gone are those days where we can really take a lot of pride in terms of what we used to call an automation and writing a macro and delivering a macro and using that as a technology and say taking a lot of pride saying that, hey, who says that we are not? But I think gone are the days we really can't do that. And when I have to reflect back and think that, okay, if we have to start today also, what are the things which are like ground up when we have to really kind of make some kind of disruption, some kind of a change from an industry perspective point of view. The very first thing and the fundamental thing has to be we have to make some kind of a disruption through a mechanism which is more self-learning in nature. We can't be repeating ourselves over and over again in the very same manner. Can we bring in technology in our own world which is far more self-learning, which can at least take care of the redundancy in the system, which is all of those kind of a mundane kind of work. And once we have established ourselves from a self-learning, can that be more agile in nature? Because it cannot be a rule-based phenomenon. You create a system and it fails in a newer world. It has to be thought in such a manner that it is equally agile as well as when it's self-learning, so that you are able to adapt in all possible kind of a situation. And at the very third level, it also has to be predictable in nature and prescriptive in nature. Now, all of this cannot happen with any kind of a traditional technology. You have to think of a new age phenomena. And this new phenomena, probably for a lack of better terminology, I'll continue to use the term which is AI, because that's a term we still can adapt and probably make those changes in each of these three areas, if not more, if I'm again talking about a ground up kind of a phenomena. And I said that, but I want to take a step back. If I talk about our own very traditional market research world, we have that whole convention of there's a client servicing person, then there are operations people, and then so many different kind of people, and it's so human dependent. And I started by saying that, hey, it has to be self-learning. We have to at least start by removing the redundancy in the system. If you look at the very first point, by any conservative estimation, we spend $5 to $10 billion just on the operations of market research for a $45 billion industry, and that is mostly human driven. 90% of this spend is all human cost. And I think no one in this room would disagree that if only a part of it is also technologized, you can save a lot of money out of that. Not only money, speed to market will be far more effective. Because if you look at the life cycle of a research project, large part of your time is spent in this whole operation aspects of things. Execution, as I talked about. And I think I've heard that enough in some of the past presentations where we talked about that we have limited time for insight. And I think that has been a cry from the corporation that why should I give so much importance and value to the research world when I'm not getting the consultancy out of it? What's the point? And I think we have kept crying. It's like a chicken and egg kind of a story. You don't pay us, and hence how can I provide that kind of a consultancy? Whereas the corporation always end up saying that why can't you provide that kind of a consultation? We are so grappled with day-to-day kind of an activity that we don't have those kind of a time to kind of provide that. While we have taken good as a leap of faith and maybe we've taken a right step, where we are now trying to create a lot of DIY kind of a platform. But I would say that rather than having a short-term kind of a vision, let's think slightly more futuristic. And when I say futuristic, probably not more than 3 to 5 years. Can we make the platforms also more agile in nature, more smarter in nature in terms of they can learn on its own and provide inputs to the clients as they move along, rather than creating an environment which is point in time kind of usage, and then it's not of any further usage. So can we create which is more business oriented and agile in nature? And I think the other thing which as researchers we have always felt very uncomfortable with is, hey, we are very familiar with our world, which is to use data, which is a typical research data. The moment you talk about alternate other kind of data, the digital data or the transaction data or some other kind of data, I don't know how to make use of it. Probably you have to get out of that comfort zone and start thinking in that direction rather than just feeling uncomfortable about it. And I should appreciate and I should thank all of you because I see that's happening. But I think the speed of that change has to be much faster than what we have been seeing. So going back to probably what I was talking about at three-very level, and probably at Course5, we have taken that stand and we are trying to drive at each of those three levels in some ways to kind of bring in some kind of disruption. So at the very first end, which is self-learning, and which I was talking about the redundancy part of, which is the huge operation. And if you see, this is extremely familiar to most of you who has ever done a primary research, that this is the typical kind of a process we follow in any kind of a research project, where client give you the brief, then you design the proposal, the questionnaire and whatnot, and there is a part which is being highlighted, which is typically takes the a lot of time, and probably it's far more repeatable in nature. Can we create some kind of a technology disruption or intervention which can make it far faster and far more effective? So we have taken that stand. In the last 18 months we have been investing in an AI technology which can do this with a click of a button. We are not saying that we are already there completely, but we have made a huge inroad in that direction. And I also take a pride in saying that probably we are the first one. We have already filed a patent for that, and the patent application has been accepted. And what we are saying, this will give you, with any conservative estimation, 50 to 70% efficiency. And I'm not shy by saying that if you're able to adapt that at an industry-wide level, I'm not saying that only Course5, anybody and everybody who's able to adapt that, we can save billions of dollars. And that billions of dollars means that's just cascading in nature. We say for ourselves, we say for our client has more faith in us, we are able to deliver faster, probably they start spending more in this industry, and probably that will mean that we are in the growth trajectory back again. Reduce people dependency. It's not about that we don't want to employ people. It's about, can we, with the same set of people, can we get more? Can they be more productive in nature? So that's one intervention we have done, and I think it is giving huge results. So to give you an example, there's a front end, which is the question bank front end. You have to put in some of your key KPIs that, okay, this is the way I want to do this research. It will mine the data bank and it will give you a skeleton of the questionnaire. You can modify that. While you're modifying, it is learning from your work and it is becoming smarter. The next time when you use it, has become even smarter, and so on and so forth. Next stage is when you have a lot of operations people who script the survey. You don't need those many people. It can auto script, it can understand, it parse, it apply the logic and whatnot. So it is using a lot of robotic process automation, the NLP and whatever the technologies are, and is trying to do all of that. I'm not saying we are eliminating the role of humans, but we are reducing the role of human and bringing in speed and cost efficiency into the system. So at that very first level, we are doing that. At the second level, where we want to talk about agility alongside with the self-learning part of it. In custom research, if I talk to a lot of maybe the impulse category corporation, bulk of their spends have always been in the space of pre-launch testing kind of work. I have serviced a lot of CPG clients, and we very briefly talked about some kind of a platform. Can we have a platform which is far more agile, which is thinking from a business perspective, and it is also learning as it is being used. It is not just that. So I always get to hear from the corporation that, hey, you know what, this gentleman has been servicing for last 10 years. I don't want him to be out of this account. And the reason being because that learning has been residing with that individual all this while. And if the person goes away, then it has to be start from scratch. Why can't we build that learning into a system where I'm not so human dependent? And can that really increase the velocity of my launch to kind of a market? So I sleep today, I wrote the brief and I sleep today, and tomorrow morning I have the results with me. Now, I'm not saying that will happen in all the cases, but that's also a possibility one can drive. Can it have a self-learning mechanism also? So every time I'm using it is learning from my world and probably making me also a smarter individual. We talk about, so many times we talk about the benchmarks and norms. These are all to create a dynamic world for that. We are not restricted that, okay, once in a while I'll try to create those kind of a situation. And of course, again the whole phenomenon of cost reduction. Now, every time when I say cost reduction, it is also about giving that value to the corporation, and corporation sees that value and has the confidence to start spending more in this whole world. So I'm not saying that we will bring down that $45 billion industry to a $20 billion industry. We want to grow that industry, but give far higher volume for that particular kind of a value. That's the whole idea. And the third thing, which is more on the predictability side of things, where we are saying that we are sitting on tons of data. If the organized market research world is almost 100 years, imagine the amount of data the research world itself is sitting on, and how well we have used that data. I think someone talked about metadata analysis, I think the previous presentation. can we really do that? Look at consumer data on one hand and look at some kind of an AI engine of the data of the world which is residing there, and become far more predictable in nature. So give you an example. We all do communication testing in our life. You would have done tons and tons of communication testing in your world. Can we use some kind of a computer vision to break that creative into micro frame, and it is able to identify variables of each of that frame, map that with some kind of a consumer data, and be able to answer 3 of your key business questions? Can you be more useful in terms of my new creative design perspective? That doesn't mean that I'm trying to eliminate the role of a creative person or the gut feeling, but can some ways the data can help me do that smarter? Can the system be predictable, be good enough to predict that the success or failure of a particular creative which I plan to take to the market? Why for every creative I have to test in the same fashion which I have been doing all this while? Do I have enough learning where I can really do that without doing another research, so to say? And also, can it also help me plan my media better? And all of that is possible because we have data sitting with us. It's just about using some kind of a smarter technology and embedding that with some kind of a data, and we will have answers for that. So yeah, I think those are the 3 things we are trying to do from our perspective. And yeah, as I talked about, I think we need to really drive digital transformation as an industry, and I think we are also trying to do that. And I'm sure if we have to think from a bottom or top-down kind of a perspective, and if revenue and the cost is the biggest factor, by intervention of these kind of things, we will be able to create a win-win situation for both for corporation as well as for agency. Thank you.
Thank you, Manish. What questions do we have around Manish's presentation and digital transformation? Does anyone disagree with any of his assertions? Question there.
Yeah, it's me again. But it's more of an observation since we are at the end of today, because many of the interventions, including this one, for me were about how agency or solution providers are now starting to become more innovative. But many of the examples that we've been listening to were about agencies or solution providers becoming more innovative, yet keeping on serving businesses that are still a bit conservative or traditional. So for me, it's a sort of an easy win because then you position yourself as the innovator versus a client that is more traditional. But the real challenge is how do market research agencies can really become innovative to also onboard clients that instead belong to extremely innovative industries, such as, for example, online-based companies.
Absolutely. So, look, I don't disagree with you. I'm saying there is an intervention which is required at each end of the spectrum. In the current way of doing things, there is enough scope to bring in that kind of an innovation, which I briefly talked about. And there is a newer emerging world. There is an alternative world of so-called market research innovators who are trying to do things differently. And I think there is space for both set of world to coexist. And I would not say that the newer age company will only adapt the newer ways of doing, or newer thing, type of doing. They will probably also adapt the existing way, but in an innovative way of doing that particular thing. And we ourselves are an example where we work with a lot of new kind of corporations who are the new age ones, the technology clients, and they're very happy to adapt these things. So yes, I kind of agree that both will coexist. Depending on the situation and time and the requirement, we will have more choices to pick from.
Hi, Tom from MRMW Research. You were talking about how we all, as agencies, probably sit upon a massive mountain of past data and how that can be leveraged to produce automated insights moving forwards. What degree of consistency would you say that we need to really be able to leverage that? And for example, some of your studies might be on a 1 to 7, 1 to 9, 1 to 10 scale. You might have rep sample versus category users versus heavy users. How do you square the edges of that and make it all work?
Look, again, when it is technology, it is what you're feeding, it is learning from that. It is not from the very onset smart enough to understand. You have to somewhere take it to a particular level, saying that, hey, this is the way I have feed it in, this is the way you're supposed to evaluate things, and after that it's more self-learning. So we have to pick our battle, we have to draw our boundary, where we want to start with, and where we want to end with. We probably cannot be extremely bullish in trying to expect to get things done, all of it, in one go. We probably have to take a step in time. So to give you an example of the predictability which I talked about. So with the technology guy, he said, why don't we pick up one of our products which we have researched immensely over the last 10 years. We have enough data for a particular geography, and we believe that there are 10 or 15, 20 different variables which have that 80-20 kind of an equation. And let's focus on that. And let's see how the predictability is giving that accuracy around that one. Once I have that confidence, probably we'll start expanding into the other horizons. So it has to also learn, adapt, validate, and then move to the particular next level. So yeah, I think that's the way we have to go.
That's great. What we'll do, so thanks Manish, but stay up here of course because you're going to sit on our panel. So we're now going to move into